On this episode of Africa's Big Switch, the ABS team sat down together with Mrs. Nana Midugu. She's the head of sustainability and ESG at the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, where she's responsible for developing and driving the authority's sustainability strategy and climate initiatives, as well as implementation of the authority's ESG framework across its investments and its partnerships. She has extensive experience in infrastructure investments, particularly in originating, executing, and managing investments in the agriculture and motorway sectors. Her expertise spans various areas, including strategy development, program design, and project management for both private and public sector entities. She has been involved in the delivery and implementation of key national initiatives and also in the development of national policies. We hope you enjoy this.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Africa's Big Switch. Today we'll be joined by Nana Skari Midugu, where we'll be talking about sustainable and impact investing, a perspective from Nigeria. I would like to introduce Nana. Nana, hi, how are you?
Hi, good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on which part of the world you're in right now. My name is Nana Skari Midugu. I am the technical advisor to the managing director and CEO of Nigeria's Sovereign Investment Authority, which is Nigeria's sovereign wealth fund. As part of my role, I drive our institutional strategy, and as well as I also drive our sustainability and ESG strategy. My background is a bit of infrastructure investments and management consulting. Studied engineering in school, computer systems engineering, and oil and gas management as well. And here I am today.
Thank you, Nana. So could you tell us a bit about why you decided to join this industry?
Well, I think for me, I would be lying if I was to say, right from when I was a kid, this was what I wanted to do, right? It's one of those things where you find yourself somewhere and then you just develop passion for that thing. And I think for me, that has been not just now, but even when I was in management consulting. So I think the most important thing, or the most fascinating and interesting thing for me, is being able to add value and create impact. So not just, implicit impact, but like tangible impact, seeing your investments come to life, knowing the difference you're making, in the lives of people, in your country, in the environment. I think I accidentally landed here, but actually, I don't think it was an accident. I think this is exactly where I was supposed to be.
Okay, that's really interesting. And on a day-to-day, so you mentioned making tangible impact. Can you give us like an idea of the kind of things you do in your current role that make these impacts?
Okay. All right. So I'm going to, and excuse me if I blab a bit, but I need to provide full context, right? So just a bit about my organization, Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority. It was established by an act of the National Assembly. And we have a threefold mandate, which is to build a savings base for future generations of Nigerians in the eventual depletion of our hydrocarbon resources, to provide economic stability in times of distress to the federal government, and to improve the quality of domestic infrastructure. And we do this through three separate and ring-fenced funds, which are the Future Generations Fund, the Stabilization Fund, and the Nigeria Infrastructure Fund. Future Generations Fund mostly invests in, so for our stabilization and future generations fund, we invest globally, but the Nigeria Infrastructure Fund has a domestic mandate, and the FGF, which is the future generations, invests in private equity, VCs and the like, hedge funds and the likes, while the stabilization fund invests in, high grade financial instruments. So we're talking US Treasury bills, corporate bonds, and the likes. And the Nigeria Infrastructure Fund invests in key sectors of, the infrastructure space, specifically agriculture, healthcare, motorways, power, mainly renewables, gas industrialization, technology, and financial market infrastructure. So in terms of my day-to-day, I do a bit of everything. So I have oversight on all our projects. So all our projects under the NIF, our externally managed investments, which is the FGF and SF, our operations and all of that, putting together, the strategy for the institution, for the authority, articulating what our goals for the year, what our goals are for the year, and also keeping an eye on implementation. And then a huge part of that is obviously driving our ESG implementation. So for NSIA, sustainable investment and responsible investment has always been has always been at the core of our mandate. But, as time has gone by, it has become imperative, or rather it became imperative for us to integrate ESG capabilities and frameworks within our investment, into our investment decisions as well as our operations. So we developed an ESG strategy and a framework, and our strategy is anchored on 3 key buckets. So ESG in our institution, ESG through our investments, and ESG through our partnerships. So within the institution, just making sure our operations as an institution is it does not adversely impact the environment, making sure we create social impact. So be it the communities around us or even our employees, and making sure we have strong governance structures in place to ensure we run in a transparent and accountable way. So that is the ESG within the institution. And then within our investments, ensuring, that we actively invest in climate aligned and climate resilient solutions, and also embed ESG considerations in our deal screening processes, to make sure our investments do not have adverse effects on the environment. And then ESG through partnerships, we partner with institutions locally and globally, we partner with these institutions to try and drive, the achievement of sustainable development goals, the achievement of net zero targets, especially for Nigeria. And yeah, so on a day-to-day, it's a little bit of everything that I have mentioned, just a bit of everything, which obviously would go into more detail as we go on.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's really, everything you've been saying is very interesting to hear. Could you tell us a few, should I say, problems you've identified while you're working, or your team or your company, and what were the solutions that you all decided to do?
Okay. So I would say a key problem, or I would like to couch it as a critical success factor instead. A critical success factor working especially in Nigeria, and especially through our infrastructure fund. I would say a key thing which a lot of people or a lot of organizations might overlook is stakeholder engagement. I cannot overemphasize how carrying along and obtaining the buy-in of key and critical stakeholders in different sectors has helped, drive a lot of our projects. We know we're in an environment that could be, very bureaucratic. With whatever process it is, there's typically a lot of red tape, and in as much as we are owned by the federation for the federal, states, and local governments, as well as the FCT, we always make sure we're in compliance with regulations and laws. So if there's a process that needs to be done, so for example, say we're setting up, we have a project that we recently commissioned, a 10 megawatt solar plant in Kano State, and before generating any sort of power in Nigeria, you're supposed to get a generation license. So something like that, obviously, we wouldn't just go ahead and do it because, we are the government or we've been mandated by the government, right? We have to go through the right channels, or we had to go through the right channels to get our generation license. So things like that, no matter how much of an independent institution that you are, you really need to carry along and obtain the buy-in of stakeholders. And really, it's just making people see the big picture. So even things like having to do a project where people need to be relocated, for example, when you present the big picture or the end goal to these people, when they share in your vision, they're able to help, drive your goals or drive your project or provide the support that you need. And at times the support could be as little as just signing one paper or making one phone call or stamping something. It could be so little, but then that little thing can hold up your entire thing. So I would say a key thing that has proven to be imperative, that if not handled properly, literally you can have you would have zero progress in your project, especially in the infrastructure space in Nigeria. It's adequate stakeholder engagement and management.
Okay. Sorry, just to jump in there. I found your ESG strategy very well rated, and the strategy that you have across your funds very, very, very defined. I was just wondering, in terms of deployment, deployment of your funds, are these done by external managers, or is it a decision made by individuals within the sovereign wealth fund?
Okay, so for our stabilization fund and future generation funds, those are externally managed investments. So there are funds of funds, right? We have fund managers, that we commit, funds to, and then they deploy. Obviously, we are carried along, in the process, but because obviously these are managed by, other fund managers. However, with the Nigeria Infrastructure Fund, we run that in-house. So we have our project teams, across the different sectors. We source our deals. At times proposals are submitted. At times we source the deals. At times we even come up with, it might just be an idea that we come up with and we build on it and we do some research and, bring it to life. So the infrastructure fund is run, in-house, while the future generation funds and stabilization funds are externally managed. So we have fund managers for those funds.
Okay. And in terms of the type of projects that your infrastructure fund deploys into, can you give us a range of the kind of projects? Are they mostly within defined sectors, or are they more in sectors that are up and coming?
Yeah, so we have focus sectors, and we also have sectors of interest. So our focus sectors are agriculture, healthcare, power, mainly renewables, gas industrialization, motorways, technology, and financial markets infrastructure. So those are our focus areas. So typically, an investment under the Nigeria Infrastructure Fund would fall under one of those focus sectors. And we do have a number of investments across all these across all these sectors. I could provide examples if you want.
Sure, yeah. So I was thinking more in terms of like, so you mentioned power, for instance, and
Yes.
for us, a lot of our shows, also our podcasts, so far have been a lot about power and energy. It would be interesting to know the kind of energy projects or power projects you look to, deploy into, or you following the solar wave that's happening in Nigeria, where a lot of people are going into development of, solar technology, battery, etc. Is that something? Is
Mm.
that kind of projects you look to invest in, or are you more into the infrastructure and distribution?
Okay, so I would say currently in terms of our power our portfolio in the power space, we have a 10 megawatt solar plant in Kombozo local government area of Kano State. So till date is the biggest solar plant yet in Nigeria. It was commissioned by the president, I think it was either 30th or 31st of January this year. So the project seeks to provide, obviously, so the place it's located close to an industrial cluster. So the tenants in the industrial cluster would be the off-takers,
Mm,
of the power generated from the plant. So based on this, project, based on the success of the project, our learnings from the project, we intend to proliferate this across the country, and we're going to do that through a renewable energy platform. So the renewable energy platform would invest in, solar PV generation projects, manufacturing as well. So it would go a step backwards. We're open to going a step backwards in the value chain, so backward integrate and the like. So because it's been the experience on the Kano Solar project has been, um, which I can't even think of a word, but it's been an experience, right?
mm,
And we've kind of, to a large extent, figured out how to do such projects within this environment successfully. And that is something we're trying to, replicate across the country. So
okay.
those are, our current power portfolio, those projects. Obviously, there are other projects that we are looking at. But for us, when screening a deal, some of the key things we look at is, first of all, it has to fall within at our focus sectors, or at least our sectors of interest. It has to be a project that would have nationwide strategic impact. A project that would have very minimal, if possible, zero adverse effects on the environment, and obviously a project that would have, very good social and commercial returns. So, yeah, those are some of the projects in that portfolio, in our power portfolio.
So from implementing these projects, what challenges do you usually come across?
So I would say one challenge I would say is, again, I had touched on this earlier around the bureaucracy and red tape of some of these licenses and permits that one needs to have. I think it's important that we streamline the process for obtaining, licenses and, permits across different sectors, because that makes it a lot easier. If not, you're doing the same thing for like different things, but you need each of them, right? So it's a cumbersome process. So I would say that is one. And then secondly, definitely human capital development. Um, this is something we have seen in our healthcare investments, where we currently have a cancer center, an oncology center in Lagos State, and we have diagnostic centers in Abia and Kano States. And what we have seen is not lack of, but I would say limited human capital. So especially we invest in all these machines, right? Spend lots of money, set up these centers, and then having to train people, or even when you train them, maybe it's not the machines are not handled properly, or you see lapses here and there. So I would say within like the health sector, I know that is something that has kept resurfacing. So we pay a lot of attention to human capital development, because there clearly is a gap there. And then again, obviously, there's the economic environment as well. You have a case where you start a project, and midway to your project, or before you even go far, there's an inflation, and your initial cost has to be revised or augmented, because you have prices of raw materials, or rather prices of your inputs going up. So that is something that obviously has kept on resurfacing. And then again, the foreign exchange volatility, right? Because at times we partner with, we have strategic partners, and these may be people that are bringing in, dollar investments, but then you're spending it in naira, and naira is losing its value, and you're earning your returns in naira, and then you have to pay back in dollars. So it's kind of like that whole the foreign exchange volatility is also a huge, I would say, a huge problem, that keeps popping up.
Yeah, and all these risks are always there, the operational side of it, the foreign exchange side of it. This industry is a very interesting one. But on the human capital aspect, if you don't mind me asking, is there a plan in place to help educate the younger generation coming up? Maybe scholarship plans, or introducing it as an extra module in schools or in WIEC? Are you aware of anything like that?
So currently we made an investment in Bridge Academies. So Bridge Academies helps in kind of promotes learning in, I would say, I don't want to say low income, but not so average communities, like within the country. So we made an investment in that company in a bid to kind of support the education sector. In-house, we run a graduate analyst program where we have a bunch of graduate analysts, and then put them through intense training, and then some of them are then hired, or come to work for the authority, and also as part of trying to make an effort in developing human capital. So obviously, for all our respective investments and projects, they all handle some sort of training and capacity building, on projects and portfolio level. We have that in place. But just overall, another thing we're currently running is our NSIA Prize for Innovation, which seeks to bring together techpreneurs, so entrepreneurs in different sectors that have tech-enabled solutions. So we currently have a portal on where registrations are being submitted, after which would have a shortlist, and the shortlisted candidates will run through an accelerator program where they would have access to key people in the tech space, key tools, capacity building, and all sorts. And at the end of the accelerator program, would select some finalists. So even if people don't end up being finalists or winning the program, they're able to take advantage of that accelerator program. So we do run things here and there. So whether it's through our investments, or through programs that we run, in a bid to at least support the development of human capital in our own capacity.
Very exciting stuff. I really wish I had your job now. There are a few points that I'd like to go on what you said. To be honest, like I think one of them was the cancer research centers in Nigeria. I wasn't really aware that we had that many research centers, and it kind of makes sense to hear about the flight in human capital and that in that sector. So I was just going to ask you, based on that, what are do you feel like they have been, aside human barriers from human capital, do you feel like there have been barriers for further financing in infrastructure space within Nigeria? And how does that kind of affect the way you guys look at investments there?
Okay, so before I respond, I just want to provide a bit of clarity. The cancer center it's not a research center; it's actually a cancer treatment center. So we treat, we provide oncology services and treat cancer patients. So yeah, your question, you said apart from human capital developments, other hindrances to infrastructure investment in Nigeria, right?
Yeah.
I would say, I mentioned this earlier on, but I would say it's one of the key things, which obviously is foreign exchange, right? So for us, NSIA, we have received funding from the government, right? From excess crude revenues, which we have used to fund these projects. And in some of the other projects, we have co-financed we've partnered with strategic partners to finance this. But then in the space in general, you'd see that people, or rather institutions that may not necessarily be on an NSI level or have the NSI name or the access to, that vast network or, consistent capital injection, for example. Obviously, these companies or these firms would have to raise financing, and raising financing again is not so, especially for infrastructure projects, it's not so easy, because with infrastructure, we know it typically takes time, right? So even when you have a small project per se, it would take you a bit of time, along with the other Nigerian factors. So, and again, we know that borrowing rates are ridiculous. So even when people go out to seek external funding, they are exposed to the foreign exchange risk, because you're borrowing in dollars, you're spending your money in Nigeria, you're generating revenue in Naira, and you're using that Naira to pay back. And maybe you borrowed when Naira was, for example, let's say 325. And then when it's time for you to pay back, Naira is, 450 to $1. So already that is even already putting you, at a disadvantage. So part of what we do is, come up with solutions to address some of these issues in the infrastructure space. So, I mentioned that one of our core sectors of focus sectors is financial market infrastructure. So basically, financial market infrastructure just puts in place market enablers for, to facilitate infrastructure financing. And I'll give you an example of an institution that we have set up to address some of these challenges. So we set up InfraCredit, right? So what InfraCredit does is it provides guarantees that basically enhances the credit quality of local currency debt instruments. So it basically facilitates it makes local currency bond issuances more attractive to institutional investors. So you have pension funds and insurance firms subscribing to these bonds, issued by infrastructure companies, but have been guaranteed by infra credit. So when that infra credit guarantee is there, they're able to secure or gain access to long-term and cheaper financing. And I would say, obviously, we know how pension funds are very particular about, about investing in infrastructure. But through infra credit, we have been able to mobilize financing, local currency financing in form of debt, to infrastructure projects, hereby obviously providing or addressing a solution within the space. So these are some of the things that we do when we come across a challenge, whether it's just a challenge that directly affects us. We think about in the big picture, okay, is there anything we can put in place to address this challenge, not just for NSIA, but, for the country as well. So we'll set up these sort of institutions that help address these challenges and help release flow of financing to bankable, infrastructure projects in Nigeria.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, just quickly on what InfraCredit does. Is it more of like an institution that guarantees the local payment, or does it also guarantee payments if FX rates were to move up or down? Does it work in that way?
So because let me put it this way. The bonds that are typically guaranteed, right? The bond issuances that are guaranteed by InfraCredit are local currency debt instruments. So there is no exposure to FX. So, and that is why the target investor universe is institutional investors such as pension funds and insurance firms, because there's a whole lot of pension funds sit on over 13 trillion naira. So when we talk about money, there is naira in abundance for investment in infrastructure projects. But then the key thing is, how do you now mobilize these funds towards infrastructure projects, or what mechanisms do you put in place to give these institutional investors the confidence, to invest in the infrastructure place, which was what birthed InfraCredit. So by providing this guarantee, the pension funds feel comfortable, investing in form of debt in high quality infrastructure projects. And obviously, InfraCredit does a lot of DD, very, very detailed DD and credit assessments before providing, these guarantees for bond issuances.
It's honestly been very interesting to hear about the finance side of things. But I want to touch on a bit of some of the projects itself, because I remember when we were offline, we briefly spoke about the plan to distribute the clean stoves. Are you able to tell us more about it and what outcome you're looking to see?
Sure. So that is the Carbon Vista project. So the Carbon Vista project is a partnership between the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority and Vitol. Vitol is the largest independent energy trader in the world. So what this and the name of the vehicle is Carbon Vista. So what Carbon Vista aims to do is to identify, develop, and invest in carbon reduction and removal projects. Such projects need to have huge socioeconomic impacts, and they need to also support the achievement of sustainable development goals. So the pilot project under this is, the distribution of cook stoves and water filtration systems to 400,000 households in Nigeria. Now, a key thing, before I provide a bit of context on the project, a key thing or a key aspect of this Carbon Vista is that we would sell carbon credits from these projects that we are developing. So we're starting off with distribution of water filtration systems and cook stove. So obviously the water filtration system is just provide clean, water to low income communities, right? And the cook stoves are energy efficient cook stoves, to reduce first of all, so to reduce two things, to reduce cutting down of trees, to for cooking, and also to reduce carbon emissions from cooking. So it's like a double-edged sword kind of, or two-tongued approach rather. So the point of this is, so this is a very this project is very heavy on the social impact, right? But then the plan is to, and not just for this project, for the project under Carbon Vista, the plan is to sell the carbon credits, the carbon credits generated by these projects, sell them and use the proceeds obviously to fund more projects. As we know, the demand for carbon credit is it's crazy. It has grown significantly over time, and obviously as sustainability and climate change has become a very serious issue, and as countries, not just countries, and even firms and organizations have set net zero targets and trying to decarbonize and reduce their emissions. This has kind of like catapulted the carbon trading, or the carbon market, where you find carbon emitters either buying credits to offset their own emissions, or just buying credits to help meet their net zero targets. So there is a market for these credits. So it's like, okay, how do we solve a social problem, or create social impacts, but then at the same time again be able to, because these things have to be, in order for it to be sustainable, or in order for us to generate as much impact, there has to be some sort of returns, right? So the returns part of it is through the sale of carbon credits. So that's basically what that entails. And other, so that is the pilot project. Other projects that we're currently assessing under the Carbon Vista vehicle includes reforestation projects, regenerative agriculture, waste management, and such projects basically that reduce carbon emissions and also have a huge social benefit.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's really insightful. So I was wondering, in terms of like distributing to the low income household, what measures are you using to decide what areas and places you want to carry out this project?
Okay, so we are working with a Nigerian or local institution that has, so for example, Vito, for example, has done similar things in, I believe, Kenya, and in a couple of other developing or emerging economies. So, and beyond working with Vito, obviously, we have to ensure that there is some sort of, for lack of a better word, let me use the word local content, right? Understanding of the local environment, and even in terms of the distribution, like you said, to ensure that these are being, distributed to people that actually need it, and not just people that would, because I mean, we know there's that Nigerian factor of somebody will come and collect theirs and go and sell it. We know that is there. So we're working with a local firm, that would also support us in terms of the distribution, not just distribution, but also in terms of monitoring the usage of these cook stoves. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it is through the usage rather that we're able to compute carbon emissions reductions, which we would later on sell.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. Just to like, as well, I guess we're getting towards the end now. So from your whole journey so far, from your experience, what lessons have you learned that you think will be useful to our listeners?
Um, hmm, Lessons learned. Okay. I feel in general, I would say in terms of infrastructure investments or financing of infrastructure investments, the truth is there are funds are available, right? It's just being able to position or being able to position yourself or your institution or your company to be able to access those funds. So I would say in terms of key things or key lessons, depending on who your target investor is, you have to make sure you have certain things in place. If your target investor is the private sector, then you have to make sure you have a clear returns mechanism, because the private sector, yes, they would be interested in social benefits, but at the end of the day, profit is what is key, right? So there needs to be, if the target investor universe is private sector, you have to have a clear returns mechanism for whatever proposal, whatever project you are pitching. If you're thinking institutional investors, then the key thing beyond just the returns mechanism is having a de-risking mechanism in place, because no matter how amazing returns you promise them, it's like, okay, how do we reduce our exposure? So having in place the proper de-risking tools, which can include blended finance models where you get some grants from development finance institutions and the likes. And also, there's a huge pool of financing available, especially for climate-aligned projects. So for mitigation projects and for adaptation projects, there are climate financing institutions sitting on billions of dollars available to fund, projects that either reduce carbon emissions or help those that have been affected by the adverse effects of climate change to adapt, to their new realities. So this pool of financing is there, and especially like for Nigeria is able to access. There are loads of them, but if you look at the top ones and the countries that are able to access them, Nigeria can. And because again we're a developing nation, a lot of these funds are available to developing nations, right? So there are many forms of financing, I would say innovative financing mechanisms out there to support infrastructure projects, especially climate aligned infrastructure projects. I would say another key thing or another key lesson or comment that I would like to drop as well is in terms of people going into the green space, whether it's renewable projects or whatever type of projects, there is a room for such projects, because as we know, Nigeria has its energy transition plan as we intend to achieve or work towards achieving net zero emissions by 2060. So it would be good for institutions to align their green portfolio or their climate portfolios to Nigeria's energy transition plan, and leverage on those plans. At least that way, it's kind of like killing two birds with one stone, where you're developing projects, for yourself or for your organization, and at the same time, you're supporting the country in achieving its net zero targets. So yeah, I would say if I was to preach the gospel of infrastructure finance, those are the two key things that I would hit on.
Great. That was a perfect way to sum it up. I mean the on the point on accessing financing for infrastructure, I was wondering if you could explain a bit more what kind of companies or what sort of projects are usually like deployable. Do you need to see a long track record with sponsors or the company that wants to develop the project, or do they just have to have like a solid business plan and strong network? just in case we have any of our listeners that are looking to do infrastructure finance projects at some point in Nigeria?
Okay, that's a good question. So obviously there needs to be a very solid business plan. So whether it is a new idea or an existing project that is looking to scale up, the business plan, the business plan needs to be solid. There needs to be a value proposition. Why is it so? What makes this different from, every other? So if it's an existing solution, for example, what makes this different, from every other solution out there? What is the impact from a social angle? What is the impact from a commercial angle? Because the returns, like I said, the returns mechanism has to be clear, even for us as the sovereign wealth fund. The commercial viability of a project is key. Would hardly go invest in a project that is not commercially viable. So that has to be clear. What are the risks, associated with this project, and how do you intend to mitigate those risks? So even things around your team, do you have a team of people with, in-depth knowledge and strong expertise in this place? Because you're giving your money, when you're investing in a company, you don't necessarily, yes, the company would provide feedback and all, but you don't really micromanage, that company. So you want to make sure that the team that you have on ground, are solid people, and even beyond that, just looking at doing an industry review as to, okay, who are the current operators, and your strategy as to how to compete against, or compete beside, these existing firms. So those are some of the things, to look out
Okay. Thank you for that. And another question I have for you is, do you feel that the sector in Nigeria would benefit from being privatized?
Yeah, that question can be very political.
Happy to skip it. Just to...
to be honest, of course, but then at the same time, you have seen cases where privatization has not necessarily led to, the expected breakthrough or the expected, improvements in a sector. So yes, do we think private sector? Yes, but then I don't think that is just the one answer. Like just privatizing it, would just make all the problems go away, right?
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, fair point. And are you able to share your strategy or the kind of projects you've embarked on to support low-income communities?
Okay, so for example, I mentioned the project on the Carbon Vesta that we are rolling out. This is not really a project. This is not really a project. This is more of an institution that we have set up. It's called Family Homes Fund. I don't know if you've heard of it. So Family Homes Fund is basically a social housing initiative that kind of aims to provide affordable homes for Nigerians on low income. And through Family Homes Fund, I believe so far, well, I don't know as of today, but as of end of last year, over 13,000 homes had been delivered, to low income households. And then through our other projects, now it might not be a direct project that is directly addressing an issue, but then regardless, all our projects, we try to embed some sort of community supports. So for example, we have one of our agriculture investments is an animal feed processing business in Panda local government of Nasarawa state. So what we do is we plant maize and soybean and we process this into animal feed. So this project sits on 3,500 hectares of land, and we have a lot of infrastructure. So apart from running the business and running the project, what we also do is we have an outgrowers program for the surrounding communities where we provide them with inputs. We teach them sustainable agricultural practices, and just basically help them to make a living for themselves. And beyond this project, so this project I just spoke about is called Pandagric Novum. So beyond Pandagric Novum, we also have a project in agriculture as well called Babangona. So Babangona is a high impact scalable agriculture franchise. What we basically seek to do is improve the lives of smallholder farmers, right, through provision of agricultural inputs, training, as well as credit. So Babangona focuses on smallholder farmers, and as we know, in the Nigerian agriculture sector, smallholder farmers make up over 80% of the Nigeria's agriculture sector. And then we also have FAFIN, which is the full meaning is Fund for Agricultural Finance in Nigeria. So basically, this provides also credit and technical assistance to agricultural SMEs. So the focus is on SMEs across Nigeria. And one of our baby institutions as well is the Development Bank of Nigeria, which seeks to provide financing to MSMEs, through wholesaling, through commercial banks, wholesale to commercial banks. So yes, we have those projects that directly, focus on, whether low income people or low income households, or those that are quote in quotes at the bottom of the food chain. So we have those that are directly targeted at addressing or catering to that strata, that social strata, and also with our other investments, we indirectly also provide support to low income households.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. I think this discussion has been very insightful for our listeners. I know it's definitely been very insightful for me. Appreciate it.
No problem at all. Thank you. I really enjoyed them. I didn't know I liked talking about my institution this much until I didn't realize it. I'm just like, oh wow.
Quite impressive. You have strategies that cover a range of sectors and a range of industries and supports low income communities. So it's really quite impressive and good to hear.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. And we are we'll soon launch our maiden impact report. So our impact report will just shed a bit more light on our investments and the impacts that we've created, in terms of economic stimulus, in terms of jobs created, students we've trained, and all of that. So definitely, I think once it comes out, I'll put a reminder now so that I share, the link, or at least the documents with you guys. So that would also speak to some of the impact that we have created across different sectors in Nigeria.
We actually have a bonus question we always ask all our guests. And that is, if you could have an all expense paid trip anywhere in Africa, where would you go and why?
I think I'll go to Mauritius or Seychelles. And why? I mean, it's obvious. The blue waters. I love anywhere like resorts. I love anywhere that gives off resorts, vibes and just chilling vibes. So yeah, an all expense paid trip. Definitely Seychelles or Mauritius, or somewhere definitely with a nice beach, maybe Mombasa in Kenya. Somewhere with a nice clear, beach, blue waters, and all that. That is I prefer that to big cities. I like the quiet and, just the relaxation of that.
That's great to hear. I think Kenya is quite a popular one among lots of people as well.
Yeah, and Zanzibar as well. I know Zanzibar is also a popular destination, especially for those that want clear blue waters, white sand beaches, and all of that.
Yeah, 100. Thank you. Just do you have anything else you want to say, or do you want to
No, just a big thank you from me. It's been really good.
It's been really insightful. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Nana. We really appreciate it.